Thank you very much. Don't ever use remote viewing to play Keno numbers. Have you heard about our experiment we did last night? We, in Hawaii, ahead of time at 1330 Sidereal, played 400 games of Keno, brought it to the casino, and got our butts kicked last night. It was a massacre. It was the Saturday Night Massacre. We're going to publish the data on our website, and we may have beaten chance, but we certainly didn't beat the house. So our great Keno experiment was not too good. I want to tell you a quick story about a cat, a very remarkable cat named Smokey. Back when I lived in Salt Lake City a few years ago, I was a television reporter for NBC there, and I did a feature story on a really interesting cat named Smokey. Smokey lived at a feed store in Murray, Utah, which is south of Salt Lake City, and a very popular cat. All the people knew him. He hung out there at the store and was a pet. One day, a rancher from Idaho came down to buy some feed, backed his truck into the loading dock, and they loaded the sacks of feed there. And then the rancher, he coming to the big city, Salt Lake City, wanted to spend some time, go see some people, go to lunch, so he left his truck there. Apparently, Smokey the cat got in the back of the truck and took a little nap. So the rancher comes, drives his truck back up to the ranch in Idaho, and as he gets across the state line, the Utah-Idaho border, he's pumping gas into his truck, and he looks in the back, and he goes, "Oh my God, it's the cat from the feed store." So he goes, "Here, boy, here, kitty, kitty." And the cat jumps off, scampers off into the brush, and disappears. So the rancher spends about an hour, "Smokey, here, kitty, kitty." Cat doesn't show up. So he drives back to his ranch, calls the feed store owner and says, "Your cat is in Idaho." It was about 120 miles as the crow flies, probably a great deal farther than that as the cat walks, because you probably know how this story is going to end. A month later, and I did this story, in drags this skinny, poor Smokey, lost most of his weight, his fur was matted and just had lost fur, his legs were almost paralyzed, but by God, he walked home. He found his way. Now, how many of you think that that cat had some mystical, magical powers that we humans don't? Or how many of you think that that cat was smarter than us humans? There are a number of studies published in the scientific literature that show that animals have direction finding ability, seemingly intuitive abilities to find their way. From snails and slugs to monarch butterflies to cats and dogs, homing pigeons, and yes, even human beings. Let's dim the lights and go to the slides here. So we're talking about, yeah, it helps if you turn it on. Okay, thanks. Direction finding and remote viewing. This is something that has eluded most schools of remote viewing up until now. We've never seen any methodology that has a precise, structured, and accurate way to determine location within a remote viewing session. We've seen people try to use dowsing. We've seen some dangle pendulums over a map or maybe draw crude maps of their own in session and then compare those maps to known topographical images on a known map. Nobody's really showed you a structured methodology to do this precisely and accurately. But in many remote viewing sessions, the location might be the most important data you could want. There are some targets where you don't want to know what it looks like or smells like or sounds like. You just might want to know where it is. Where's the missing child? Where's the sunken Soviet submarine? Where is the downed airplane? Where's the missing ship? Where's the murderer hiding? Where's the buried treasure? As Valtra told you, I'm from the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild. We have the largest collection of just lame Keno players in the world. No, we're terrible at Keno, but we're pretty good at remote viewing. We have the largest group of trained remote viewers, civilian remote viewers, in one location in the world. We are a nonprofit organization. No one gets paid for viewing. No one in our group gets paid for teaching. This is all about just disseminating information about remote viewing and demonstrating remote viewing. If you haven't seen our website, it's www.hrvg.org. We get about 250,000 hits a month. We have trained people around the world. I think we have some people here that we've trained via our online training, but mostly we train in-house. One of the reasons we get so many hits, 250,000 every month, is that we publish data. We publish full sessions. At the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild, we don't make statements about remote viewing or conclusions or predictions. We don't say anything without showing you the data and the analysis. We have about 200 full sessions with analysis, both operational, validation, a few esoteric targets sprinkled in there. So if you go there, you can click through and see examples of our remote viewing. That's Glenn Wheaton when he was in the Special Forces with his green beret, a little younger, a little thinner. Here he is today. Glenn was a remote viewer for the Special Forces Remote Viewing Unit, and our methodology comes from that methodology. He is now the president of the Remote Viewers Guild, and the data that I show you, the methodology that I show you today, comes through him, and he doesn't accept a nickel for teaching us. One of the things they were very interested in Special Forces was finding direction without a compass or equipment. If you had a Special Forces operative in hostile territory, maybe he didn't have a compass or had lost his equipment or was in a situation where he might be in triple canopy jungle and couldn't even see the sun to determine location. Could this person find his way where he needed to go by dead reckoning or intuition? Now, it's my understanding that Special Forces did some research into this. It has not been public. This is something that you might be able to do a Freedom of Information Act, or might be able to find now, because I think it might be becoming declassified. There were some studies that were done in the public sector that were published. The Human Compass. This was done by Robin R. Baker. A Sense of Magnetism was a study. It was published in New Scientist back in 1980. This he developed into a book which was also published 20 years ago, Human Navigation in the Sixth Sense. And these studies were very interesting. What they did was they took people and they blindfolded them. The search term for this, of course, is spatial awareness and direction finding, or finding direction. They took test subjects and they blindfolded them. And then they drove them around and disoriented them, took them to a remote location, kept them blindfolded out in the woods, spun them around so that they were completely disoriented. And then they said to the test subjects, which way is north? And while still blindfolded, they would say, that way is north. And then they would say to them, which way is your home? And they'd say, my home is that way. And they were able to do this accurately to within 30 degrees. That's significant, to be able to intuitively do that within 30 degrees. And what's fascinating to me is when they took the blindfold off and had them try it, the performance actually went down. So when you had the visual input, you didn't do as well. Now I want to move away from remote viewing and intuition to just nuts and bolts, finding direction. This is the kind of thing that they teach in the Boy Scouts, how to find an unknown location from two known locations. There are two ways to do it, intersection and resection. In intersection, let's say that you don't know where that is, but you want to determine where it is, determine this location on a map, but you know this location and you know this location. You can take compass bearings from both the known locations, that's called intersection, and determine an unknown location. Resection, if you're lost in the woods and you have a map and a compass, but you can see a mountaintop here and a mountaintop here, you can take a bearing to that and a bearing to that, and you can plot your location. Intersection and resection. They teach it to the Boy Scouts. Now, how can we use this skill in remote viewing and use it intuitively? Okay. First of all, I want to show you how an example of how this is done in real life, non-remote viewing. Let's say we have a fire spotter here. This guy's name is named Harold the Fire Spotter, and he's up in his fire tower in the Green Tree National Forest, and he looks out and he sees some smoke over here in the distance. But he doesn't know if that wisp of smoke is coming 2 miles away from 2 gullies over or a few miles beyond the next ridge. But he's got to determine quickly where that is. So he enlists some help. Here's Harold up here on Notch Top Mountain. And he knows that he takes a compass reading and he determines that that's 098 degrees. That's the direction of the smoke. Now we got another guy down here on another fire spotter station on Flat Top Mountain. So he takes a bearing and he says that's a bearing of 047 degrees. Where they intersect, by intersection, you can determine the location. A few terms for you. That 098 magnetic and 047 magnetic, those are called azimuths. Where you plot the azimuth on a map, that's called a line of bearing. So you have two lines of bearing that intersect, and you can report that, hey, that fire is 2 miles up Sheep Dip Canyon, and get the firefighters there. Another definition, where these two lines of bearing intersect, that's called a cut. If you had a third spotter up there on a third location, could give you a third line of bearing, that's called a fix. So if you have 3 known locations, and you can give me the direction from 3 known locations, then you're able to fix the unknown location on a map. Now, using this in remote viewing. When you remote view, you displace a portion of your subconscious awareness to the target, and you bring back sensory data. After you've worked a target for 45 minutes or an hour, you should have good target contact. Let me give you a few examples real quickly of what we consider good target contact at the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild. We work all our targets either blind or double blind, absolutely no front loading at all. So here's one that I worked a few weeks ago, double blind, and this is, we usually show the whole sessions, don't have time here, this is an excerpt. I looked and I saw a guy in a uniform, looked like he had a pack on. I saw these straps, and he had something strapped on in front of him. Feedback was, it was members of the 82nd Airborne preparing to jump. Now that's what we consider good target contact. Valtra, who introduced me today, did this. She was given only the target ID H7X2 D9E4, double blind, monitored, but the monitor was blind. This was produced solo. The target was the Russian Revolution. She drew the angry mob, the palace, and she had a person inside. She said that these people were angry. They were, had a coup attempt. They were going to overthrow this person. The Russian Revolution, the overthrow of Tsar Nicholas. That's what we consider good target contact. Here's one we did for a skeptic. The skeptic had the picture. He was the only person who had the target cue and the photo in his possession. He actually wrapped it up in tinfoil. Gave us, he thought, if it's in tinfoil, you won't be able to penetrate it. But he gave us, he thought we were doing something tricky. He gave us only the target ID. I produced this sketch, and that was him bungee jumping. So that's what we consider good target ID. Another example.
What do you say to that?
You know what? That's a long story. He pulled a real, he gave us a target ID that was F4U. It was the designation of a Corsair fighter in World War II, and he knew that. And so in his intent, the target was him bungee jumping, and this designates a Corsair fighter. And 7 of our viewers drew single-engine propeller-driven aircraft, and 1 drew a Corsair, the gull wing. So we got a combination of data. He ran a game on us. Skeptics, you can just never trust them. Anyway, they always want to, you know, they don't do it, they don't play fair. It was a Hindenburg. The viewer drew the Hindenburg, double blind. That's good target contact. This is one that's on our session that you ought to look at. The whole session is really good. The target was the Valley Temple in Egypt, and the viewer drew the stone arches and said it was an entrance. This one was interesting. When we view and we go to S5, which is altered state, sort of ERV, the target can play out as a little movie. And what I saw was, I said, I saw this guy in black jumping up and down, and a guy in white circling him. And I said, this looked like some type of competition or choreographed dance or some type of athletic thing involving jumping up and down. I had a really nice little movie playing out for a little while. Well, the target was the karate scene from The Matrix, filming that. So it wasn't really a fight, and I got a sense that it was just this rehearsed jumping around. Another good one, this is a bank building fire. I looked, I very clearly saw this, I remember this. I saw the building with smoke pouring out of it. This is a good one. I cued this one. I was the only person who had this one in my possession. I gave the target ID to a third party who then published it out to the viewers, and one of the viewers drew this: water, mountains in the background, pipeline going out to the water, a fence, smokestacks, and he labeled this as electrical generating facility. And the target was the Kahe power plant on the island of Oahu. So that's when we mean target contact, and you're going to task a viewer to determine directional data. If they have this kind of target contact, they're able to do it. Now, how we go about doing this? Any and all information about the target may be obtained through the signal line. All information may be obtained through the signal line. But if you don't task the viewer on target to obtain directional data, or if your methodology doesn't allow for the determination of directional data, then you'll never get it. You'll never find it. So we have a viewer in session with good target contact. How do we do this? First, a little bit of the history. I'm sure some of you people know what an O5D is. An O5D in the military is an electronic warfare cryptologic interceptor radio direction finder, commonly known as O5D. And what O5Ds do is they use very sophisticated equipment to determine the direction of a radio signal. You want to know where a radio signal is coming from? They use this equipment. They can give you a magnetic bearing to the signal. But O5Ds played a little game. What they used to try to do was they would sit there without their equipment and they'd say, I bet you I can tell you where this signal's coming from without the equipment. I'm going to do it intuitively. So it became sort of a little O5D rodeo, or an O5D game they'd play. They'd sit a guy in a swivel chair and they'd tape a yardstick to the chair, and then they'd actually draw a compass on the carpet, on the ground. So that would be north, that would be 90 degrees, that would be 270, 180. And they'd feed the guy a signal. And without the equipment, he'd spin there in his chair and he'd say, 047 degrees. They'd have someone off here with the radio direction finding equipment, and they'd say that was 051. If he got within 5 degrees, that was considered a hit. So in Special Forces, when they were developing their remote viewing program, they early on realized that, hey, there are a lot of targets, there are a lot of situations where we need to know the direction to the target. So what they'd do is they'd employ the O5Ds, because the O5Ds were the guys that had demonstrated the skill. So the remote viewers in the Special Forces unit would be over here working their methodology, and they get the O5D and they put them in the circle. And they'd say, find it. And they were able to do it. But they refined it, because if you can put a guy's awareness inside a circle on the ground, why not, in session, draw a circle on your paper? And your circle on the paper is oriented so that that's north, that's east, okay? 0, 90 degrees. And then you draw the direction, the azimuth, the line of bearing to target. It's just as if you were placing your awareness in that circle on the paper and then querying your subconscious awareness, what's the direction to target? Now, we determined that remote viewers determine direction using great circle azimuths. As I stand here today, and I know that that is north, well, then Hawaii, my home would be that direction. If I went on a bearing roughly there, I'd go to Hawaii. But if I also went 180 degrees opposite, I'd also get to Hawaii. It'd be a lot longer flight. I go all the way around the earth, but I'd come back. So remote viewers determine direction using great circle azimuths, and we take a front azimuth and a back azimuth. You need, when you're remote viewing, you're not a fire spotter up on the mountain here, up on the Green Tree National Forest. But you need 3 known locations. So let's say that you have a missing child somewhere here in the Green Tree National Forest. You want a remote viewer to find that child for you. You need 3 known locations to intersect, or to use your intersection. So you're going to use Joe Mills Mountain, Notch Top Mountain, and Flat Top Mountain. But you can't tell the viewer that, because the viewer needs to remote view double blind. We don't front load. You can't say to the viewer, hey, there's a missing child in this forest, and we're going to give your reference locations as the top of Joe Mills Mountain and the top of Notch Top Mountain. That's too much data. It's too much front loading. You just give the viewer a target ID and encrypted reference coordinates. Let's say you were using your baseline as Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, and you said to the viewer, we're going to find something, and your encrypted locations are Seattle, Los Angeles, and San Diego. Well, the viewer would start thinking, if I go this way, it's on land, but maybe it's a missing boat or plane. It could be in the ocean. So you're going to get your conscious mind trying to mull this over. So it's much better to just say to the viewer, your target ID is this number or letter sequence, and you got encrypted reference locations 101, 202, 303. So the viewer's not told where the locations are. He's only given encrypted reference locations. When the targeteers it, he has to make a conscious association in his intent. The targeteer sits down and says, 101 is Joe Mills Mountain. 202 is Notchtop Mountain. 303 is Flat Top Mountain. So what you publish to the viewer is an operational target ID and 3 encrypted reference locations. Now, what I'm doing here today is not meant to be instruction or training in this procedure because I don't have time, and we usually train viewers for about 6 months before we give them this protocol or this methodology. So I'm only here to familiarize you with the theory behind it. But what you need to know is that the viewer in session realizes that there is an encrypted location, that those numbers represent a real place, and he needs to send his awareness, displace a portion of his awareness to those locations. Then the viewer in session displaces his awareness to that location. And then the viewer executes a directional ideogram from each encrypted location to the target. So what you get is this. In session, the viewer has drawn a circle, and he's oriented, so that represents north, that's south, east, and west. The viewer displaces his awareness to 101 and draws a directional ideogram, which is also a line of bearing. So how do you take that data and get useful information, say to find your missing child in the forest? The viewer uses a protractor to determine the lines of bearing. So you're given military protractors. You place your protractor, you align it on the paper, so that's north, and you take your line of bearing and you write it down. That information is given to an analyst. Then an analyst plots it on a map. If the viewer has done his or her job correctly, this is what you get on the map, a fix. Here's one line of bearing. Here's another one from an encrypted location, and here's another one. Where they meet, that triangle is called a fix. To make this more usable, user-friendly, we determine the Steiner point. And to determine the Steiner point of the triangle, you bisect each angle. So you bisect that angle and draw a line down, you bisect that angle and draw a line over, bisect that angle. That's your Steiner point. You then determine the square units of your triangle. If this is kilometers or meters or miles, you use a formula here, a mathematic formula, to determine the area of the triangle, and then another formula to change that into an elliptical area. So that then becomes your search area, with that the most likely starting point, and you plot that on a map as your search area. There are a number of types of errors that can crop up in this. Just as there are a number of types of errors that can crop up in Kino. The first one is viewer headspace. We all know that remote viewing is not 100%. No viewer is on 100% all the time. So a viewer might give you a few lines of bearing that are good and might lose his concentration for a moment. The viewer might be on or off when he's doing the entire session. So viewer headspace. Viewer orientation. The viewer is supposed to dispatch his awareness to the target with a north-facing orientation. Sometimes viewers will be facing south. And so you have to turn all their data, and that's done by the analyst. Sometimes viewers will get there and they'll all be 12 degrees off. And over doing many targets and check bearings, you can determine the viewer's orientation and any little idiosyncrasies they have. Conversion error. You've got to use good maps, and you want to convert this from magnetic to grid, because the viewer's going to determine azimuths on a magnetic line of bearing, and if you plot a magnetic bearing on a map, you need to convert it to grid. So there are errors that can crop up in doing that. Arithmetic. Remote viewing is so right-brained when you get out of session and you've got to use a protractor and you've got to do a front azimuth and a back azimuth and add or subtract 180. People make stupid arithmetic errors, we got to check that. Plotting errors. Sometimes the protractor isn't straight. Sometimes you don't get it aligned correctly on the map. And finally, poor maps. You can't just go to MapQuest and pull a map off the internet, or you can't use a cheap map. You've got to use navigational grade maps. So there are a number of errors, and the analyst has to deal with all those. Okay, does this work? Let me get a drink of water. We've been doing this for a while, and we have some examples, both operational and validation. This was a validation target that I gave to one of my classes when they first were indoctrinated into this technique. By the way, this protocol in our methodology is known as S7 Annex A, so it's done in stage 7, and it's an annex. So this was S7 Annex A as I was teaching this to my students. The target was the Oakland Bay Bridge just after the earthquake that they had there. Okay, we're able to know if they're on target and bring me back good data about the bridge and whether they can pinpoint the bridge in Northern California. Here's a map of the Bay Area to orient you. That's San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley. That's the Bay Bridge right there. Now the encrypted reference locations, the numbers that I gave the viewers, are off the map. You know, there's like San Jose. So the play area, the area that this encompasses, is like very much Northern California. And one of our viewers gave me this fix, this triangle right here. His lines of bearing were this triangle, and his Steiner point was here, which was about a mile from the bridge. And his elliptical area of probability included, his fix area included the bridge. If you were looking for a downed airplane or a missing ship in Northern California, and we could give you data from remote viewers that could put you to within a mile of that to begin your search, how valuable would that be? Here's another one. Is that in focus, or are my eyes going bad? This is Houston. The target was a validation. I think that's as in focus as it gets. The target was the Houston Astrodome. This is the greater Houston area. The reference locations were, again, off the map. One of our viewers gave us this fix, and that yellow circle is the Astrodome. So, again, she hit the Astrodome. That's a pretty good fix right there. If you look at this Steiner point, I'm going to show you another viewer's data where the Steiner point was a few blocks away. Now, the odds of getting identical Steiner points is just astronomical. I was talking to Dean Radin about that, and he said it's just essentially zero for this to be chance. Here is the actual, this is my session on this. This is my Annex A data. Here are the circles I drew. These were the reference numbers. All I was given was 981-497-025-614. So I draw my directional ideogram. Then I get my lines of bearing, my azimuths are 054 magnetic, 234 magnetic. We plot it on the map. This is the fix area, and within the fix area is the Houston Astrodome. So if you were looking for a missing child in the Houston area, and I could give you an area to start within a few blocks of that, how valuable would that be? Another validation target. This was Valtra in class, double blind. The target was Charlie Porter. He made a free ascent of El Capitan. El Capitan is the cliff at Yosemite. As I said, you can determine how good, very often, the directional data will be by how good the session data is. Here's her S3, a very elegant S3 for a guy climbing a cliff. She drew very steep land with a human there. The area he was climbing was known as 3 cracks, 1, 2, 3. So that's a very elegant, simple S3 that demonstrates good target contact. And she got a cut from this line of bearing, or from this reference location, a line of bearing, from this reference location, a line of bearing. Now see this pink right here? It looks like an ink smudge. That's the topographical lines of the cliff. And they're so close together that it looks smudged. She gave us a cut on the face of the cliff. If you were looking for a missing child that was in all of Yosemite National Park, and a remote viewer could say to you, I bet you the kid is right there, that would be pretty valuable, don't you think? This is a target we worked in conjunction with the Honolulu Police Department. I'm a television reporter, and I was doing this story, and we have an association with a couple of investigators. We've done some work for the homicide and missing persons. So when I went out and they were searching for Glenn Infante, was distraught, had a gun, and had disappeared, and they were very sure that he was going to kill himself. Well, we worked the session, I queued it up, Valtra and others worked it blind. In Valtra's session, she saw a man walking through the woods alone. She turned in her data, and I looked at it, and I said, I don't think so, he killed himself. And she said, no, I saw this guy walking through the woods. I said, no, he killed himself. The police know he's been gone 3 days. He isn't just up there having a party in the woods. He killed himself. They're trying to find his body. She said, no, I saw him walking through the woods. Well, her S7 Annex A, they were looking for him on the island of Oahu, pretty good sized island. And where Valtra's, I'm going to show you an area of the map above Pearl Harbor called the Aiea Heights area. And she gave us a fix right here. And it turned out the police told us Mr. Infante walked out of the woods alone. So she was right. He was alive, and he walked down this trail right here. So she was within 400 meters of where he was. If you had a missing hiker or a missing person, and a remote viewer could put you within 400 meters of him to begin the search, how valuable would that be? Okay, another person they were searching for, Rafael Resendez Ramirez, the FBI had him on the most wanted. Massive nationwide manhunt. We worked it. Valtra's data, here's her Annex A lobs. This is the actual page from her session. So that was plotted with a protractor, put over the map. And by the way, the encrypted reference locations were far away. They included the continental United States. So you have a huge area. And she gives us a fix in Houston. And when I worked it, I gave another fix in Houston. You need feedback in remote viewing. We get the feedback. The data was correct. Can this work off planet? Well, they've mapped Mars. They have latitude and longitude and latitude lines for Mars. NASA lost something on Mars. The Mars Polar Lander never phoned home. So we worked it. And this is one that we think we're going to get feedback on because it's our understanding that one government agency has found the lander and they're just trying to determine how to tell the other government agency, NASA, where your missing lander is, and there's some politics involved. So we've published this data for quite some time. We're hoping for some feedback. But here's Valtra's, the yellow lines from 192 west on Mars to there. She has another line of bearing and another line of bearing. My data, I had a cut on the same place. Now the odds of this, if you just randomly take one known location and go to another location, you have a 360 degree, or 360. For a second one to randomly intersect is 1 over 360 to the second power. For a third one is 1 in 360 to the third power. For mine, that's a total of 5, is 1 over 360 to the fifth power. That's according to Dean Radin. I went over this with Dr. Radin. So if Valtra and I could go out into the, play some craps and hit that kind of odds, we'd make certainly a lot more than we made on Kino. We're waiting for feedback on that one. Another target that we're waiting for feedback on is one of the great mysteries of the 20th century. Where is this airplane? Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Electra. We've had this published on our website for quite some time. Now, I want to show you an area that encompasses a huge chunk of the Pacific Ocean. This is literally hundreds of thousands of miles. The encrypted reference locations are off the map. They're way far away. But what we have here is Howland Island. Here's the equator. Baker Island, the Phoenix Islands. And I want you to keep your eye on this area southwest of Howland and Baker Island, because these are all viewers working blind and independently who give us a fix here, who give us a cut here southwest of Howland and Baker Island, who give us a cut here off of Howland Island, who give us another fix southwest, who give us another fix here, who give us another fix, and these are coming from just way far away, who give us another one. And it just goes on and on. Viewer after viewer is giving us the same cuts and the same fixes. Now, we're hoping for feedback on this because we published this data over a year ago. And now there's a team that's been searching for Amelia Earhart, and they have very sophisticated, expensive equipment. They're putting a lot of money into this. And it says here they've narrowed their search area to 600 square miles, and it's in the area where our data indicates. So we're hoping that they find this sometime soon and give us feedback. If remote viewers have located and published ahead of time Amelia Earhart's airplane, that would be significant. So the question is not, can you find something remote viewing with remote viewing? The question is, what do you want to find? So questions. We have a few minutes. Yeah.
Why do you use magnetic
Because that's the way viewers perceive, that's the way viewers intuitively give you a line of bearing on magnetic. The viewers determine it on magnetic lines.
So you could use GPS coordinates now, you just give a point.
Oh yeah, we've done that. As a matter of fact, the one that I showed you, which one? A couple of these, they were GPS coordinates. It wasn't Notch Top Mountain. It would be like 19 point, Infante was. It was actually 19.75, and yeah. Yeah, but you know what? It's easier. We think if you say something that's significant, like the Eiffel Tower, rather than just a longitude and longitude coordinate on Mars that's all the same, the viewer will be able to do it. But it's better if you can give something like, okay, from the Golden Gate Bridge. Where is it? Okay. Yes, if you were doing an operational target, very often you would give sub-cues. So you might have a team of viewers work it, turn in their data to the analyst, and if they haven't given you the essential elements of information, that might get retargeted, sent back to them prior to feedback. They work it again. So you could give them, okay, give us another S7 Annex A. And if they give you one area like, you know, it's somewhere in the continental United States, and they all zero in on Utah, then you could retarget that and give you a baseline that's within Utah, and then go ahead and narrow it down.
I know it's in Salt Lake to begin with. Can I just give them?
Sure, you can get a map of, yeah, Temple Square, 39th South and 45th East, Skyline High School. You could use those, and as long as you have a good map. Yeah. Any other question? Yes. Sometimes you'll give 5 reference locations to the viewer, and the reason you might want to do that is the viewer might cheat you the first time. They just go, ah. And then the viewer settles down and does you 2 good ones. And then on the 4th one, they run out of steam. Well, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and they'll 3 out of 5. It's where you get the fixed. And one viewer can give you, but it's much more significant if multiple viewers give you the same fixes. You should really never rely on just one remote viewer as your sole data. We do consensus analysis. Yeah, it could be done, but boy, it sure, you know, remote viewers need a team. One remote viewer working alone really isn't worth that much, is what we found. It's just much better if you have someone to do the targeteering. You need someone to take the, you know, you want to work double blind, so you need someone to take the information and give it to a targeteer, cue it out so that you can insulate the viewers, and then have several viewers working it. You want an analyst that's blind. The analyst should not know what the target is. When we do analysis, the analyst is also double blind to the target. Well, psychic and remote viewing is a little different. Remote viewing is much more structured. Yeah. See, if I'm here in Las Vegas today, a map that shows you north, that's not magnetic north.
No, that's true north. That's why I asked.
That's true north. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you got to look at the legend on the map when you. The financial, well, the financial industry, I can't speak to that because there are other organizations here that teach for money, but we're a nonprofit organization, and I've never made any money for viewing or for teaching. Neither has Glenn. We charge just enough to keep a classroom and buy pencils and papers and protractors, but, oh, can you make money doing this? If you could accurately do this and find treasure, you could make, there's some, we're hoping to, do I know of that? I heard Prudence Calabrese found some buried treasure once. She's not here, but I'll tell you who else. I don't think this is secret, but there's some former remote viewers that have this skill that get paid a lot of money by oil companies, telling oil companies where to drill. They're working full-time. This is designed for finding tangible things, things that exist in a location. Yeah. Paul? No. One thing you need to do to calibrate your viewers is to do what we call check bearings. You might have a viewer sit down and we might have to give them 50. You know, Lynn talked about keeping a file of your viewers. If you're using this, you've really got to do this. You've got to do a lot of validation targets, targets where you have an accurate map and you can plot the viewers' lines of bearing and determine what they tend to do. We know we have one viewer, Jim Carlson, who did the Egypt sessions, who he gives a true bearing each time. He doesn't have to be corrected. You know, I haven't tracked enough of our viewers, Glenn. I think most of their inclinations are pretty consistent. Yeah. If you can give a viewer consistently give you a line of bearing that's within a few degrees, oh, you're golden. The analyst can, I mean, that's if you with 3, if you get a fix and they're within a few degrees, that's going to be very valuable data, even if it's off a little bit. Like if you looked at a couple of these examples, some of them were off a little bit, but still, when you triangulate it and fix your Steiner point, I don't concern myself with that too much. I'm a viewer. I'm not so much the analyst of this. Glenn analyzes that. Yeah. Oh, how many people? Yeah. Operationally, when we break into groups, we're designed on a model that, for example, Valtra and I, with 2 other viewers, are MJ001, and that's 5 viewers. So within the guild, we have a target committee chairman, and we have other groups. So within one working group, it's 4 viewers. So someone gives us a target to work. The target committee chair gets that so that the 4 viewers are insulated, and that gives that to a targeteer. When the target information is published to the 4 viewers, you have a mission manager, a viewer, a monitor, and an analyst. That's 4. Yeah, the targeteer is someone outside of that group so that it can be double blind. Yeah, but 4 is the minimum number you need. You need groups to remote view. That's the reason Glenn is teaching us for free, is because here he got out of the military, he's a remote viewer. What good is he alone? So he wanted to replicate himself so that he could have some people to do all these tasks so we can accomplish something. Well, you know what? I was on Coast to Coast radio and I thought, I went to the general manager and I said, you know, I'm involved in human cognition. And he said, oh, you mean that remote viewing he'd heard? I said, yeah. I said, there's this radio show that wants me to do a little interview coast to coast, and is it okay? He says, oh, yeah, that's okay. He says, I don't believe any of that, but that's okay. So they don't, some of them, if they take the time to look at it, they accept it, but most of them just don't understand. We have a long way to go. We need to educate the public about this. This is real. I mean, this works. This is not, Glenn is always telling us this isn't magic. This isn't woo-woo psychic stuff. There's a scientific basis to this. This is a natural communication skill. All we're doing is natural communication, yeah. Oh, it depends. If when I showed you the fix on the Houston area, that was hundreds of thousands of miles. So you could get within a few miles and that'd be a big hit. When you're doing El Capitan, we're within a few yards. A few yards. She was within yards of the actual target. The guy that was missing on Oahu, that when I showed you the map with the above IAEA, I should have gone back to that, but those grid marks were what, 1,000 meters? 1,000 meters. So it depends on the size of the map. You know, you learn to remote view and you bring back data about a target, and you're amazed. And then after you've done that for quite some time, then when you apply this, and it's just a line, right? And then you put it on a map, and you see that it triangulates on the location. It's like, wow. That would be a future target, and our model is that the future, if you can do about 90 days out, so you should be able to, the future is real slippery, as we've seen in remote viewing, the remote viewing community. We have one prediction published on our website of the space junk falling to Earth, and they got it within about a couple miles. In the Hawaiian Islands, they got it right off of Barber's Point, and that's where it hit. So, and that was a future target, and it was notarized prior to the event. So you can do it in the future, but the future's tough. All right, thank you very much. Visit our website. We're all available via email if you have any questions. You can go to our website, and there's Valtra at HRVG. I'm Dick at HRVG. We love to talk about remote viewing, and we're not trying to make any money off of it. So we love to talk about it. There's some people here that met us over the internet and are coming to Hawaii, and we'll be here at the conference too. Thanks a lot.